Matheny is not here, we do need a motion to excuse him.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And so that passes 7-0. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's see. The Greensboro City Council strongly encourages resident input at meetings, whether it's in the council or on Zoom. And we want to make sure that we are a welcoming and safe space for all community members. In order to speak at tonight's meeting, individuals will have had to sign up by now. They may address council on specific consent or business items. 3 minutes are allotted for remarks for zoning matters. There is a 15-minute presentation, both for and against the rezoning, with a 5-minute rebuttal period for each side. We will be doing voice votes this evening. We do have a consent agenda, which are for items G1 through G10, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the February 18th City Council business agenda. This meeting does include closed captioning. I think we will be able to get through our agenda this evening before we need to take a break. Council previously postponed D1 and D2. D1 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 9206 West Market and a portion of 118 Kidd Road, 20.94 acres. Mark Isaacson for Shelley Scanlon of Colfax Realty LLC and others. And D2 is a public hearing for an ordinance for original Shelley Scanlon of Colfax Realty LLC and others. This was postponed from October to January, and the applicant now requests that council postpone until the February 18th meeting of the Greensboro City Council without further advertising. Do I have a motion?
Motion. So moved.
Moved
Second.
by Mrs. Boothwaiter, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Items G1 through G10. Do I have a motion or anything to be withdrawn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. We'll take a roll call vote on this. Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Aye.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that passes 7-0. We now move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. Item H1 is a public hearing for an ordinance rezoning for 1326 Seminole Drive and a portion of 1041 Battleground Avenue for the city of Greensboro. This item was postponed from our September 17th meeting without further advertising. This is 15 minutes for and against with a 5-minute rebuttal. Mr. Kirkman, you were doing the presentation, I believe?
Yes, that is correct, Mayor Vaughn.
Okay.
And good evening, everyone. Let me get this, make sure it's going to come up. Is everybody able to see that okay?
Yes.
All right. So the request again this evening is a rezoning request from R5 residential single family and RM18 residential multifamily to CDLI conditional district light industrial. North of the request is currently zoned RM18 residential multifamily as well as CDCM conditional district commercial medium. East of the request is zoned LI light industrial, South and west requests are zoned R5 residential single family and RM18 residential multifamily. The subject property previously included an apartment complex and a single family dwelling. The remainder of the parcel at 1041 Battleground Avenue, which you would see to your southeast, is the current location of the Mitchell Water Treatment Plant. North of the request are multifamily dwellings, a greenway, as well as office uses. South of the request is again the plant and the single-family dwellings. East of the request is also the greenway as well as office uses, and west are single-family and multifamily multifamily dwellings. The property is currently designated as commercial and a little bit of property as residential on the featured land use map of the comprehensive plan and as urban central on the future built form map from the comprehensive plan. This is a conditional application. Originally one zoning condition on this. There are a number of other ones that are going to be added this evening, so I will read those all into the record and then you can vote to accept those. So new condition number 2 states that fencing that excludes the permanent use of chain link or razor wire will be added around the perimeter of the subject properties surrounding the water treatment plant, subject to state and federal requirements and guidelines. New condition number 3, any new required plantings in landscape areas on the subject properties along Seminole Drive and Wilden Place will be multi-layered and shall be comprised of an adequate number of evergreen material to provide year-round screening, subject to state, federal requirements, guidelines, and local utility providers. New condition number 4, new principal buildings constructed on the subject properties will include brick-clad or similar material and are limited to a maximum building height of 50 feet. The building storage basin closest to Seminole Drive will include architectural elements that promotes the intention of blending the structure in with the adjacent residential neighborhood. New condition 5, a stormwater surface device, such as a wet detention pond, will not be used as a stormwater control measure. New condition number 6, uses are limited to a water treatment plant. New condition number 7, bulk tanker trucks will not use the gate at Seminole Drive unless other entrances to the plant are blocked or temporary internal site constraints restrict the routing of trucks.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept those conditions?
Move to accept. Second.
Okay, moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mrs. Abuzawader. We'll do a voice vote. Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower,
Yes.
and I am a yes. That passes 7-0.
Thank you. Staff notes that this property again is designated as urban central on the future built form map and as commercial and residential on the future land use map. In recommending approval of the request, staff notes that this does support the comprehensive plans, filling our framework strategy to invest in building and maintaining city services, to sustain livable neighborhoods, and prioritizing sustainability strategy to promote resilient, efficient, and environmentally beneficial patterns of land use. The proposed CDLI district as condition allows for expansion of the existing public facility while limiting impacts on adjacent properties. This item was originally heard at the Planning and Zoning Commission on the November 18th and was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on a vote of 5-2. There were 2 speakers in favor and 3 in opposition that night. Because the vote was less than 6 in favor of the item, I moved to City Council for further consideration. I can answer any other questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kirkman? I know we have at least one speaker. Angie, we have Carolyn Cook and is Brandon Porterfield on Zoom?
I have Miss Cook on, but I do not see Mr. Porterfield has joined.
Okay. Caroline Cook, you have 15 minutes. If you would put your camera on and your microphone.
Caroline Cook, 1341 Seminole Drive, Greensboro 27408. I am very pleased with the changes and the additional conditions in this rezoning request. I appreciate that Water Resources had 3 neighborhood meetings with us and responded to my concerns. I'd like to publicly thank a few people, Mayor Vaughn for postponing the rezoning request at the City Council meeting on December 17th. Councilmember Zach Matheny for listening to me as a concerned resident and coordinating communication with Water Resources about my concerns. Lastly, Mary Skeens of the Planning and Zoning Commission. When the original request, with only one condition, did not pass with an adequate majority at the Planning and Zoning meeting on November 18th, Mrs. Skeens clarified for me the necessary procedures to follow in order to continue to work with Water Resources for a resolution. My issues with the rezoning request have been resolved. Additionally, the Water Resources Department intends to include a couple of us residents from the neighborhood during key times in the planning and building processes of the water treatment expansion. I'm happy to say that this experience felt to me like an example of democracy at work.
Thank you. Any council comments?
I'm pleased to hear positive feedback from residents because sometimes folks don't like what we do, but I appreciate the Water Resource Department for working with you, listening to you, and finding out ways that you could get those conditions so that it satisfies the neighbors. So and you say that's democracy at work, and we say that's neighborhoods and communities advocating for their neighborhood. We appreciate that, Ms. Cook.
I would agree with you, Goldie, 100%. But the experience that I have with Water Resource, they are always very open and working with our community. They do an excellent job. They set a high example of what we need to make sure is being followed throughout. And how when we have to have projects like this, we need to make sure the city, our residents are comfortable with it and support it as well. And so sometimes we have to do more give than take. And I like hearing what the lady just said.
Yes.
This is Nancy Hoffman. I'd like again to thank you very much for your comments to us. We always like to get that input. The fact that Ms. Gaines from Zoning Commission, who was my appointment to the Zoning Commission, I'm glad that she was able to be helpful to you. And to hear Water Resources is one of our stellar departments. And, you know, the rezoning that we continued just as we began this meeting is a very complex rezoning project. And Water Resources is intimately involved in that, and the Guilford County Schools as well. So let me shout out to our water department as well, and how great they are to work with.
I think that we can all just agree on this is a great way for our staff and our communities to work together, because before things kind of get to a boiling point because no one is listening to anyone. So I really appreciate our staff that do, listen and address the residents' concerns, whether or not they can always be solved. But I do know that staff really does try. So I thank them, the Zoning Commission, and everyone involved in this one.
Well, I would say Zach's not here tonight, but I know that he played an active
Yes.
role in advocating for the neighborhood. So let's remember that as well.
Kudos.
Is there, I don't believe we have any other speakers. So if we don't have council comments, can I get a motion?
Move to close the public. Sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
That was good. So Tammy, closed. We have a second.
Second.
Mrs. Hoffman, all in favor to close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 7-0. Now we need a motion for H1.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. We'll do a roll call. Dr. Well,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Council, this is Mike Kirkman. We still need to do the statement of
Somebody gotta
consistency.
read it in.
Do you need me to pull that up for you?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Can you see that, Tim?
Now I'm working at it.
You can make it larger.
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the rezoning request for the properties at 1328 Seminole Drive and a portion of 1041 Battleground Avenue from R5 and RM18 to CDLI, Conditional District Light Industrial, to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CDLI zoning district as condition permits uses that fit the context of surrounding areas and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical condition, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Okay, so, Tammy moved it. Who seconded that?
Ms. Hoffman?
I did.
Seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Roll call. Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that passes 7-0. Thank you very much. I appreciate the neighborhood and so glad that there was a good resolution of this case.
Me too.
We'll now move on to item H2 and H3. H2 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for the properties located at 2527 Nelson Farm Road and 3824 East Lee Street. And item H3, a public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 2527 Nelson Farm Road and 3824 East Lee Street, Fox Rothschild and Four Star USA Real Estate Group on behalf of Matthew and Jeremy Causey. Do we have any speakers on this item?
And Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it does look like Mr. Causey has now joined.
Okay. Is Mr. Causey the only one on this item?
Mayor Vaughn, this is Ladidra Matthews on behalf of the applicant. I'm here to speak in support.
Okay. I do know that there is a request for a continuance, I believe, from Mr. Causey. Let's address the continuance before we move on with the rezoning. Mr. Causey?
Can you hear me now?
I can, and you've got 3 minutes to ask for a continuance, and then Ladidra Matthews will have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. This just came to my attention and many of the neighbors. We were blindsided by this request. We were not aware of it when the Planning Commission letter went out. I was out of town. And when I saw I got the letter from the Greensboro City Council. This was on the agenda. I called Council Member Hightower to bring up my concerns and on behalf of the neighbors that I've talked with. One of the many concerns that we have is it looks like to me what they're asking for is more like cluster houses and townhouses. And this was farmland with a lot of history. In fact, the house that has been cut out of that is on the National Historic Register, built in the late 1700s. Much of that property was taken by the Department of Transportation for Interstate 85 going through. The concern that I have and the neighbors have is Nelson Farm Road's a 2-lane road. East Lee Street is a 2-lane road in that section. And with the Simpkins Elementary School, there's tremendous congestion already, especially during school hours. And there's been a number of properties annexed over the years for single-family housing, and
No,
we have.
Mr. Causey, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this portion is really just for the continuance and why,
Sure.
what you think a continuance will change.
I would request a continuance to allow the opposition to bring that before the city council, our reasoning and the evidence that we are gathering. And so therefore, I would respectfully request a continuance on this item.
Okay. Do you know if there have been any community meetings?
I don't know. I think that we just spent, I think most people did not know ahead of time. The property was owned by my first cousin. He passed away. So it's the son that lives, I believe, in Oregon, working with the law firm that has been working with this. I was unaware of it. I was not made aware of it. But I'll get in touch with them and try to get more information. But I know there's a big concern with the residents, especially people that have bought land and built homes, nice single-family homes up and down Nelson Farm Road.
So that seems like that would be more of a discussion for the opposition of the rezoning. Ms. Matthews, would you be okay with the continuance?
No, Mayor Vaughn. We sent out a neighborhood letter on November 21st. There was a community meeting held December 3rd. And as you know, this was before Planning Commission and received a unanimous recommendation of approval on December 16th. So there has been ample communication from my client to the developer with everyone within 750 feet. We did have about 6 folks come to the community meeting, and we have spoken with a few other neighbors after that, before and after the Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Causey, I believe, first reached out to the city this past Thursday. He was given my colleague Tom Terrell's contact information. He did not reach out to, based on what I understand, Mr. Terrell. He has no record of any attempted outreach. I received Mr. Causey's number from Mr. Kirkman today. I've tried to reach him 2 times. His voicemail is full, so I could not get in touch with him. And so I'm happy to address his concerns during today's rezoning presentation. A lot of those things will be discussed to the extent that we're allowed to go forward, but we would not agree to a continuation at this time.
Dr. Wells?
Did you say 6 people came to the community meeting? 6 neighbors?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And that meeting was held when?
That was December 3rd.
And you haven't had any other meetings to try to get more than 6 people?
Like I said, the request or the neighborhood letter, we sent out a detailed neighborhood letter. I believe it's multi-pages that lays out a lot of facts and questions. And so sometimes that takes away the need for folks to come out, but that is correct, Councilmember Wells. 6 folks came. Some reached out after the meeting to ask us questions. And I understand Mr. Causey's representation that this is a problem with several neighbors, but respectfully, he is the only one that has joined this call and is voicing opposition this evening.
Mrs. Hightower?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be honest with you. The one meeting they had was concerning to me. I was unable to attend because it was on our council night. And so the information that I received has really been written correspondence. I have spoken with the applicant's attorney, Ladidra, once. I shared my concerns with her, and tried to meet with the developer who is in another city. And that was very difficult to do as well. Um, After hearing what I've heard from Water Resource Project and the previous, um, you know, person who spoke, I think that we ought to offer as many, maybe not as many, but at least an opportunity for people to kind of get informed. Um, when we want community to make sure that, then they may not like everything, um, but that things are more palatable. And I would like to see this continue to give them an opportunity to dialogue more, to hear those concerns, myself even personally, as well. Um, and sometimes when you get a letter, and I know Mr. Terrell said, well, I sent this letter, but you get a letter of long explanation, you lose people somewhere within the content of it. And so I would like to see it continue because I think there's opportunity to gather the information, be more informed, and maybe take some other ideas to add to the rezoning piece of it. So that's what I would like to say.
I have a quick question. Do we know how many of the opposition members attended the December 16 zoning commission meeting? We've heard about 6 attended the community meeting on December 3rd, but I'm talking about the 16th.
Councilman Holster, this is Mike Kirkman. There were no speakers in opposition at the Planning and Zoning Commission. We had a couple folks that reached out to us that said they were considering it, but no one actually participated in the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion on this?
I would like to move to see it continue for 30 days. To have
That would, so
more.
you're moving to continue it to the meeting of February 18th without further advertising?
Yes.
Second.
There is a second by Dr. Wells. We'll do a voice vote on this. Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoffman, Mrs. Buzowater,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower,
Yes.
and I am a yes, so that passes 6-1. So hopefully, Mr. Causey and Ms. Matthews, you can get together prior to the next meeting.
Madam Mayor, could you please confirm who voted in the negative?
Mrs. Hoffman.
Thank you.
I was concerned that he mentioned that there is a house that's on the National Register. I know that I think that should be considered. Maybe with your conditions or something, we can come up with some way to preserve that house.
Noted, Councilmember Wells, that's incorrect misinformation, but we'll address it February 18th and discuss it with Mr. Causey if we're able to get in contact with him between now and then.
Well, I'd like to be included in those discussions as well, Ladidra. I know we've talked a little bit. You sent me a long email that I read over, but sometimes just that dialogue sometimes can make a difference.
We'll do. We'll reach out to you both and anybody else who has questions or concerns. We will answer them and see everybody on February 18th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the general business portion of our agenda. Item I1 is a resolution accepting recommendations from the fiscal year 2024 disparity study and its recommendation to remove identified barriers to the participation of minority and women-owned business contracting and procedures. And then there is a related one, I2. I2 will be an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 117 of the Greensboro Code of Ordinances with respect to administration, minority women business enterprise participation in city construction, professional services, goods, and other services. For right now, we'll concentrate on I-1. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, I believe we have Griffin and Strong scheduled to present. And Miss Gwen Carter too should be here.
Mr. Davis?
So rusty. I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm getting rusty at the Zoom. I got to find my mute button.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll kick it over to Chuck. He's worked with Griffin and Strong and Gwen Carter, our supervisor.
Thank you.
And I'm actually just going to identify Gwen and have her discuss it.
So
She should be on.
She is.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Gwen. The city of Greensboro, as we know, adopted a MWBE program plan, and we hired Griffin and Strong to conduct our 2024 disparity study, the findings of which we sent to you as well as the recommendations. There were a number of recommendations from Griffin and Strong, several of which, so I won't go through all of the findings, but I will touch on a couple of the recommendations, and then I'll pause to see if you have any questions for us. So a number of the recommendations start with, one of the recommendations, starts with making sure that we do better tracking and reporting for our subcontracting data, applying goals on different projects such as professional services projects, removing or enhancing, our goal setting committee, making progress towards our SBE reserve program, collaboration with nonprofits to improve how we do business with our economic development partners, MWBE utilization, increasing that and doing additional outreach with some of our internal partners here in the city, and the use of our Mentor Protege program, tracking and making sure that MWBEs that need additional technical assistance are provided that assistance in a meaningful way. Now I'll take questions.
So Gwen, are you referencing making sure that we have the appropriate software through B2G, which I know we have, but are you making sure that we now enhance that software to be able to track all that data so that it's easier to capture who the subs are, who the primes are, how they're getting paid, whether they're getting paid or not, as well? Because I know we did have some trouble getting data together for Griffin and Strong. And so this will take some of the manual processes out of it.
Yes, we have currently worked in B2G to try to, as you said, get the software up and running. As I've shared with some of my upper management team, we have, over the past month, we have updated almost 15,000 payment audits. Payment audits are where MWBEs have confirmed that they have actually been paid on contracts. We are currently, through this B2G software, monitoring over 300 projects. We are currently working in the B2G software to develop a certification application or directory, where MWBEs will be identified by the trade or the scope of work that they provide. We are working diligently to vet those firms to ensure that those firms, that information that we present to our public and to our partners, that information is accurate. Those are some of the things that we're doing to make sure that the MWBE program reaches those MWBEs as well as our external prime partners to ensure that we get good information to them and enhance, if you will, improve the way that we do business with our partners externally.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. We do have a number of speakers signed up. I'm not sure who is on the Zoom and who's not. Rodney Strong.
Yeah, he's Griffin and Strong, as you know.
I'm aware of that. I just don't
Okay.
know if he's on the Zoom.
He should have been. I hope he is. I see
Yes,
the Deidre.
good
And I
good
see
evening, everyone.
Cadell.
Bedelia Troublefield. I was the project manager for this disparity study. I also have David Maher on the call, who is the legal partner and who is also handling the implementation support towards the city of Greensboro. Currently, it is just us two on tonight. We were just told to just be on the call just in case for any questions for the matter at hand.
That's great. I know that the city manager is going to schedule a work session so we can discuss this in detail. So that's great. We'll make sure you've got plenty of notice for that. Is there anything that you or Mr. Maher want to add to this part of the discussion? I appreciate you being on the call.
Yes, yeah, thank you all for allowing us to be on this call. As of currently, I do not have anything to add. David, I'll turn it over to you. Do you have anything?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I don't have anything to add either, but I am available for questions either from the council or from any other speakers.
Thank you. I see Michelle Clark Jenkins. She's with Griffin and Strong too, isn't she? So how about Vince Egan?
He's with Griffin and Strong.
Okay. I'm going to have a hard time with this name. Hema?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hema Das Martin. Yeah,
you.
she's our senior project manager over the consulting division now.
Okay.
Yeah, she's also on the call, but just observing. Me and David, we were just on the call just in case for any questions that the council members may have.
So I do see we've got at least one member from the community, Kim Cameron. Kim, are you on the call?
I am here.
You have 3 minutes.
Sure. So good evening, Mayor Vaughn, Councilwoman Hightower, Wells, Abuzater, Councilman Holston, my friend, and the other esteemed members of City Council. My name is Kimberly Cameron. I am the Executive Director of the North Carolina A&T Real Estate Foundation, and I proudly serve as the Chair of the MWBE Advisory Committee for the City of Greensboro. I am here before you tonight to urge your approval of the resolution accepting recommendations from the fiscal year 24 disparity study. The resolution is critical to removing barriers that hinder minority and women-owned businesses from fully participating in the city's contracting processes. The disparity study conducted by Griffin and Strong, dated June 2024, revealed 42 key findings across legal, policy, quantitative, and market areas, along with 9 recommendations to address these challenges. While the City of Greensboro has made strides, achieving nearly 2.5 times MWBE utilization in construction and a 50% increase in professional services, significant work remains to create equitable opportunities for all. The MWBE Advisory Committee has worked diligently over the past year to align these recommendations. Even before the study's findings were available, notable goals include enhancing communication and marketing through a forecasting system that allows alerts MWBEs of upcoming projects, targeted outreach initiatives to increase awareness for bid opportunities, streamlining the bid process to eliminate unnecessary paperwork and improve online accessibility, addressing the perception that doing business with the city is overly complex. These goals reflect a strong vision, one embraced by both dedicated volunteers and expert consultants, of transforming Greensboro into a city that prioritizes equal opportunity and economic mobility. Your approval of this resolution is more than a policy decision. It is a commitment to fostering a stronger, smarter, and more inclusive community. Let's take this step together to ensure Greensboro becomes a model for equity and opportunity. Thank you all for your time and leadership.
Thank you. And I believe we also have Carmen Arroyo.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor Vaughn and City Council. My name is Carmen Arroyo. I am with All Systems Restored HVAC and Electrical, located on Randleman Road in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm joining this evening simply because as a business owner, I recall taking part in the disparity study. However, at this time, I'm going to request that we do not move forward and adopt the findings because as a business owner, myself nor my CEO have been fortunate enough to be to share these findings with us. So outside of the summary Ms. Cameron just gave, this is the first that I've been able to locate any findings or receive any findings to review. So if Griffin and Strong would be so kind to share that information. I mean, I went on the city's website, the minority business website, and there's a link there to stay up to date with it. However, when I click on it all throughout the day, it constantly tells me that the site cannot be reached. So outside of this very moment, like I said, when Ms. Cameron spoke, I wasn't aware, nor has my business been aware of what these key findings were or recommendations. And as a longstanding minority business partner in the city of Greensboro, amongst other cities along the state of North Carolina, All Systems Restored would like to be able to be afforded the opportunity to review those findings and provide feedback on them.
So let me just clarify something for you. It means we're going to accept the report and what their findings are. Doesn't talk about implementing. So
Right.
this is just the first step. We'll have a work session
Okay.
and then we'll talk about implementation. So I think it's okay to go ahead and accept them tonight. And certainly we'll make sure that you are aware of the work session and then the next public hearing.
Okay, that's fine.
And Madam Mayor, if I may too, because I know Carmen and they've weighed heavily in on making sure our MWB program plan is fair and equitable. But again, as Carmen, as the mayor just said, we need to go ahead on and approve these findings from this study. These findings came out last year. Griffin and Strong took a year, had to do the study, of course, and get all the quantitative data together. These findings and recommendations, I know we had a work session last year actually about these particular recommendations. So tonight is to do the formal approval and acceptance so that we can begin to move forward with a revised program plan. And I have a recommendation, Mayor, once we approve this part, before we move to the next part, on what I think our next step should be in this. That will include all of our small minority businesses, but particularly some with specific interests, if you will. And I can go into detail about what I would like for us to do once we approve this item before we set the ordinance in place.
Okay. And Ms. Arroyo, our city clerk can send you a link to the study. She has your email address, so
Yes,
we can
ma'am.
give that to you to take a look at.
Thank
I
you.
don't believe we have any other speakers on this item. Have I missed somebody? Okay, then do I have a motion from Mrs. Hightower?
So moved.
Second.
Absolutely so moved.
And a
Second.
second? And a
Second.
second by Mr. Holston. We will do a roll call vote. Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes, sorry.
Mrs. Abuzawader,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower.
Maybe.
That's
Yes.
a yes. And I am a yes. So that passes 7-0. Mr. City Manager, I think you wanted to say something before we moved on to this next item.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. Thank you, and members of council. Also to Griffin and Strong, I want to say thank you for the work that you all have done to assist us with what has been a topic that we've been seeking to address here in the city. I know there are challenges in a number of areas, so we appreciate what you all have done. From my perspective, I'm proposing that myself and Attorney Watts work together and come back to you all with more definitive outline of where we look to go with this and seeking to generate a policy that we can establish here. What we don't want to do is have the study be done and we just have it hanging out there. What we want to do is make sure we solidify policy that we can have some consistency in this area. Just as the last speaker just spoke about information, we want to do a number of things to make sure that not only internally we have the information, but also externally, the folks here in our community that want to participate in our or take advantage of the opportunities that are here, that we can do that. And I'll turn it over to Attorney Watts for a few comments as it relates to next steps and some timelines.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Manager. Our intention here is to definitely develop policy around these goals and to have them presented back to council for information so they understand where the manager's policy is going with this, and also to provide transparency. I think one of the things that we have not done in the past good enough is provide transparency with council as to how the program is kind of being massaged to try to get the best results. We are certainly working to provide more data on results. So with those two things, I think we're planning to try to have something back to you in about 30 days, and we'll definitely provide input in 30 days. And if it's going to be longer before we have refined policy, we'll let you know at that point.
And I know there was a comment made earlier about a work session. We did, Attorney Watts and I did discuss, doing a work session, but we want to make sure we do it when we have, information in a substantive way so that we can, provide you all as council, but also ensure that what we're reflecting as feedback from internally, that we're reflecting a solid model that we're looking toward. So please give us a moment to identify the best timing for that.
Thank you. Sharon?
So, Mr. City Manager, I hear you, and Chuck, I do hear you. But one of the next steps incorporated in this, I would like to suggest perhaps a special review committee to review the current plan that we have now for revisions where needed. Because I think with the recommendations that are here, we've got to incorporate them into the current plan. And that needs to be some revisions. And with that special committee, while we have an advisory committee, I think we need to incorporate some staff as well as individuals like Ms. Aurora, who actually do a lot of work or come in and do a lot of bidding on city projects. I think that's a critical catalyst to making sure we get the right program plan in place and that we adopt it and ensure that it's acted upon. I also want us to look at our local preference ordinance and how we can make sure that it is actually being applied in a way that best benefits our small local businesses that are doing a lot of the work they don't get an opportunity to bid on. So I would like for you all to incorporate the next steps moving forward with that. And I appreciate the fact that you addressed having a work session with this, because I think everybody needs to truly understand the impact that this has economically in our community. This is something that people rely on as they do business. And they count on the city to make sure that they're included in this process. And sometimes I'm very disappointed in we have goals on these projects and they're not achieved. And there's a lot of excuses for them not being achieved. And we've got to make sure that we eradicate those excuses and be more inclusive in this city where we are more black and brown now than ever before. And those businesses are tantamount to us serving this community. So I would like to see that done, if you will.
Thank you. I did read item I.2 in, which is the ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 117. Do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second, I'll let you move it. but you
Moved by
know-
Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. Dr. Wells? Your microphone is off. You're muted. We haven't had to say that in a long time.
Yes.
So you are a yes. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And I am a yes. That passes 7-0. I do have one somewhat related question, and Sharon, you might be able to answer it. And it is the SVE as far as the creating. I know that MWBE has new leadership, but do we have a timeline? I know you've been working on this for a long time.
Yes, I have been, and I think Gwen briefly mentioned it
She did.
a little earlier. She knows that that is a priority, and so once she's needing help getting staff, getting her office staff, she have a couple of positions that are vacant. And we've got to get that staff because we've got to give Gwen the manpower she needs to do those things that she just talked about, you know, with putting the data in the system. But that is her next priority. We are behind in it. But I think we have the right person now who will guide that ship and get us where we need to be. And so I anticipate probably, Gwen, how would you say, maybe once you get staff and get things moving, maybe 60 days that we can go ahead on, because you've already done some preliminary work with SBE and analyzing some of the information that needs to go into the program and incorporate it all into the MWBE plan. You want to speak to that as well?
So I was going to say, yes, I think that is a reasonable timeline, and we can certainly work very diligently to make sure that that happens.
Right. Because we've had it out here a long time, and
A long time. We got permission 2 years ago.
yeah.
We got to move on this. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. And I want to stop and thank Miss Carter because she has come back in this role and has been working with a vengeance. Many hours she has put to this. You heard the numbers that she talked about. That's a lot of work that she's really focused in on. And MWB, while I talk about it a lot, it's important to every one of us that all of our citizens feel included, and she recognizes that. And so I appreciate Chuck, City Attorney Watts, recognizing her value. And I think we will see some things that we haven't seen in the past move forward quicker than before. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We are going to move on to items I3 and I4, and I did get a communication from the city attorney that we should do the presentation tonight, but not vote on it until next week. Chuck, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Why don't you explain it? Or Larry, whoever.
It's really a matter of bond counsel being comfortable with the fact of a Zoom meeting, and they have a fairly conservative view about it. And it seems to me that at this point we could hear the presentation and then simply vote on it on the 28th when you'll have another meeting. And I think they need it by the 4th of February, so it'd be important to have the vote on the 28th. But
And we would
if we
do that
whatever.
after we would just take this one single vote, or is it 2 votes?
Right.
Well, after
whatever
we do
votes are
the
necessary,
appointment.
but the presentation will be done now. And I don't think there's much of a presentation, according to Larry. But
Okay.
if you all have an opportunity to ask questions, I think that would be what we would do today.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do it. And then Madam Clerk, you'll advertise this for, or not advertise it, but you'll schedule it for the 28th at the end of the meeting.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do want to consult with the attorney offline because we've advertised the 28th meeting as a special meeting for the purpose of council considering the applicants. So Chuck, I can speak with you offline to consider how we address that.
Sure. We've got time to amend, though, right? Or renotice. We can talk about it later.
Okay. Larry, could you give us the presentation?
Sure. Two items tonight. Both are from the 2022 bonds that were passed by the voters. We're asking for 2 votes, but essentially we are borrowing funds on every other odd year over the life of these bonds. So we had the initial. You'll remember this referendum was a little bit oddly scheduled because of some changes with our regular voting patterns back post-COVID. So this actually occurred in the summer of 2022. First bond sale was in October of 22. And then we will be selling bonds in each odd year subsequent. So this year, February of 25, February of 27, and February of 29. Are the current planned sales to exhaust the authority that we have for 2022. So tonight's vote would essentially be the second of 4 sales. We're looking at funds from across the approved group, including Parks and Rec, Fire, Police, Housing, and Transportation. I will note that the funds for Parks and Rec are specific to 2 projects, Windsor Chavis and the Science Center. The reason we have 2 votes is we are selling the housing bonds as taxable rather than tax exempt. Oftentimes when you're doing housing and redevelopment, there is a private purpose aspect to that can call into question the tax exempt status of those bonds. So we just try to preempt that by going ahead and selling those as taxable bonds. There's also a small portion of refunding in here as well. We roughly $6 million of bonds that were sold approximately 10 years ago are now available for refunding. So we're going to pay those off and reissue them at a slightly lower interest rate. That will save us about $40,000 to $45,000 a year for 10 years over the life of those bonds. So we feel like that's worth doing. So I'll stop at that point and see if there are any questions.
Mayor, I had a question. I don't know.
Councilmember Hightower.
I had muted myself. Sorry about that. So, Mrs. Hightower?
I know. So Larry, do we know the dollar figures that we're looking to release on these bonds? I know you mentioned Parks and Rec, Housing, Fire, and what was the other one I think I missed?
We do, and I can run through those right quickly if you'd like. Housing, it's 10 million. Transportation, it's 5.1. Parks and Recreation, it's 32.4 million. Fire, it's 5.1, and then the refunding bond value is 6.3 million.
Do we get anything off the refunding?
Yes, we're gonna save roughly $40,000 to $45,000 a year in interest costs by essentially paying off some bonds that were issued 10 years ago, or that have been issued for 10 years and are now eligible for refunding, refinancing.
Okay. And one other question, just really kind of hearing about this. The Parks and Rec, the 32 million, will that completely cover Windsor Chavis? I know Science Center's in there as well. The total bonding was, of course, 70. We've issued 50, but will the 32 completely cover now so that we'll know that money has been expended?
There is as I mentioned, we're borrowing money on the odd years, so we'll borrow again in 2027. And right now, what is proposed in 2027 would be 11 million. That would be the final 11 million for Windsor Chavis.
Oh, okay, I see. And then the housing piece, the housing bond, that 10 million. So we would be going another 2 years. I guess I'm asking these questions because I know we've talked about doing with nothing etched in stone, smaller bonds or looking at stuff like that. But right now, I think we've got money that come out that we need to spend. So by issuing these bonds, we'll be able to start spending this money immediately, like in our housing.
Absolutely, yes.
Without
Housing, the total allocation from 2022 for housing was 30 million. The first sale we had right after the bonds were passed, we had 8 million. And as you've noted, most of that ended up going to the ICAP program. But this upcoming sale is 10 million for housing. There'll be another 7 million for housing in 2 years, and then another 5 million for housing 2 years after that.
Right, thank you. And I just want to make a comment, Mayor. I'm very disappointed in that money that initially went out. I think we could have done something a little bit better. It's like we set on that money, and it is just now. I don't know how much has been expended out of. I think it was 5 million or 8 million. I thought it was 5.
5. It was,
Okay.
Councilmember.
It was 5, and then the other 3 went to a couple other projects. But I think we really need to make sure when we're making creating these partnerships that we get quick action, kind of just like we talked about with SBE taking. We don't have to be the slowest government around, and particularly with this housing money. Because I think there have been some other opportunities we have missed. So, Larry, do we know exactly how this $10 million is going to be? Or perhaps that's a Nasha question, maybe? I assume it's all falling under housing and neighborhood development. Is any of it being reserved for RFPs for housing? Or is there money there that people will have access if they want to build some housing or do to have quicker access to?
Yeah, in fact, I'm happy to answer. Nasha also has the same information, I think, that I'm reading from.
Okay.
We got an update today from H&D. It's available for really all of their eligible programs. New development, home repairs, other city sites. It's available for any and all of those type of housing programs that we have previously funded or at least tried to fund.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Because I
And Nasha, I think you're on mute, Nasha.
Yeah, Nasha, we can't hear you.
I'm not hearing you, Nasha.
How about now?
Yes.
Come in perfect. Okay. In addition to what ACM Davis stated, we're in the final stages of identifying the goals that remain to be fulfilled in the housing GSO plan. And so that $10 million will allow us to fund some of those implementation strategies that are still within that document. So it could go to those new development projects. It could supplement our housing repair program, maybe some current city sites and some other development proposals.
Well, that sounds good. I hope we can get moving on it post haste because I'm very disappointed with that $5 million, and it has not, to me, reached the goal that we wanted. Have we done a follow up on that? And I know this is a bond question, so maybe we'll talk about it offline.
So, question, Madam Mayor.
Yes. Sorry.
I'd just like to request, especially on the housing, because it is such an important topic, that we as a group kind of make sure that we're strategic in this money and how we want to spend it, and that we have a good strategy discussion on how to maximize the benefit of this money as a group so that we make sure we're spending the funds as we've committed to.
I think we'd all agree with that.
If those are the questions, I apologize for the unable to have you vote on it tonight, but we'll have you do that on the 28th.
Okay, might make sure we keep them happy. So that is the end of our printed agenda. I think we'll do boards and commissions and comments together, and if you could keep them brief, there's a bunch of us still in the office, and the snow is actually beginning to look like the streets are getting a little slick. So if we could be kind of quick. Dr. Wells?
No, I don't have anyone to the point tonight, but I do have a request that we have a meeting with the chairs of the boards and commissions, that there be a meeting scheduled, because I think these chairs are taking their boards and their commissions that they're leading, as some of them are taking them as theirs when they've been appointed, and they are like liaisons between us and the commissions and boards. So I'd like for us to have a little conversation with the board's chairs to let them know what their role is and what we expect of them and how we expect them to treat the people that come before their boards. So that's a request.
Okay. Mr. City Manager and Madam Clerk, I think you both heard the request.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mrs. Hoffman?
I have no appointments.
Okay. Mary Kay?
Yes, I have two appointments. One, I've conferred with Councilmember Hoffman, and my appointment is to, oh, no, I'm sorry. Her appointment, which she agreed to, was to appoint Sheba Daywood to the Community Sustainability Council to replace Crystal Black, who resigned.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
I'm sorry, did you want to say something before I do that?
No, I just said second.
Second by Mr. Holston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
And I have another one as well. That would be my appointment, Melissa Bullens. And I do not know who she is to replace, because I think this one's been vacant for a while.
And is that sustainability also?
I'm sorry, yes, sustainability as well.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
No comments?
No, I think they could wait till the next meeting.
No appointments. Two quick comments. Congratulations to the Human Rights Division for the MLK breakfast, and also to the local chapter of the NAACP for the parade, for the ML King Jr. parade yesterday. And that's it.
All right. Thank you. Mrs. Thurm?
The only comment I have no appointments, is that I'd like us to go ahead and start planning for talking about the legislative agenda for this year. I don't want to get caught short where we're rushing through that. And I think there's plenty of discussion to be had. So if we could schedule that, or get Mr. Manager, if we could schedule that along with everything else we're asking you to schedule.
Yeah,
No problem.
Tammy, that's a really good point, because they're already getting to work, and we've certainly have some important things and needs.
No problem. Actually, Attorney Watts and I have been discussing that, so we'll give you some feedback soon.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Thank you. No boards and commissions tonight, but I would like to offer condolences to one of my constituents, Miss Margaret Wingfield, 92 years young. who had been a nurse for over 54 years, delivered a lot of babies at L. Richardson Hospital when it was up and operating many, many years ago. And so she had a wonderful service on Saturday, and where the nurses honor guard came and honored her and recognized her life. And she certainly will be missed. One of my favorite neighbors who made a delicious apple cake at every National Night Out. And so certainly she will be missed. Congratulations to the NAACP's parade. This is the 35th year of the MLK Junior Day Parade, and it has gone on, rain or shine, sleet or snow. And while yesterday was nice and sunny, it was cold. But everybody was in such good spirits about being out there. It's such a great fellowship and camaraderie with people participating in it. And it's something the community can truly be proud of that is here, that we recognize. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. And then the other thing I want to speak closely to is with what Goldie just mentioned. I think honestly, there needs to be a little bit more attention to the training of why people are serving on these boards. They're not just resume builders. They put it down, then sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. Yes, we have attendance, but I think we have to be intentional about ensuring the people we appoint know why they're there, because they are representative of the district if they come out of a district, or the city if they come out of a city. And the people that come before them have to be served with respect. It is not for them to have their own personal opinion about who is before them or what is being said. It falls in the guidelines of what needs to be said, but sometimes even when it doesn't, community just wants to come out and share how they're feeling, because it's how they're living day to day and what they're experiencing. And so I'd like to see us really have more of a board and commission manager position over it, where there's some training offered there, and maybe more than just one time. As things change, maybe an update year or something along those lines. The people we appoint represent us too. And so we want to make sure we're putting the right people there. Sometimes I've had people, been a little, so I've had to have some conversation with them, and say, while I understand you have this personal thought, you got to recognize, that you're here to serve the greater good. So I would like to ask the city manager to look a little bit more into that, and let's do that and create a policy around it, on the decorum as well as being part on the board or commission. How often people can serve as chairs, because
Mr. City
sometimes
Manager, you heard that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. I have no comments or appointments this evening. Mr. City Manager?
None for me.
Mr. City Attorney?
None from me. Sorry.
That's okay. One thing that I would say is it is beginning to snow. This snow was unexpected. Staff is doing a great job, even though it kind of just happened. I would ask people to be safe. This is the kind of snow that gets real slippery. Stay home if you can.
Mayor, I do have one thing. This will keep me from having to send out another message later while I have you all. With the snow falling, it appears that the front has shifted our way slightly. So in essence, to keep staff safe in the morning, we may be looking at a delay. With the temperatures as low as they are, it's not a whole lot that we can do to clear some of the areas, the parking lots that we normally do on our scheduling. So we likely, at the direction of some of our senior staff, will have a delay in the morning.
Okay. And, as always, we appreciate the employees who are out, and no matter what the whether it's responding to water main breaks and accidents and everything else.
Madam Mayor, something I read this evening in one of the emails before we got on Zoom, that de-icers and salt don't work when it's this cold. There was something about that. I don't know. Maybe somebody else can explain it. I know you need to get out of the office, but when it's this cold, a lot of the things they do don't work because it's just too cold.
Yeah.
Right.
All
Everyone,
right.
please be safe.
Yes, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay,
Ms.
moved by Mrs. Boozwayer, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.